Hello and welcome to this, the very first match of our pool play here on Saturday at the World Magic Cup. The pool play system is relatively straightforward in each of the pools you're in. Win twice, that's pretty nice. Lose two, it's over for you. These guys, they need to pick up a win here in what we've described as the group of death, because four very, very strong teams here. We're going to get a chance to see Andrea Mengucci. I mean, we've heard this tournament described as the Mengucci Invitational because of how well he seems to do at the World Magic Cup. But the Italian here, he's got some stiff competition in Team Portugal. And Mengucci on Golgari mid-range here, he's going to be facing a quick start potentially from Boros Agro on the other side of things.
I can't imagine a better person to start day two of the World Magic Cup than Andrea Mengucci, someone who has already won the tournament, someone who has 3 top 8s in the World Magic Cup as the captain each time, and also a member of the Magic Pro League, announced yesterday. He's very excited to be a pro Magic player, and as a good pro, you know, you got your turn 1 Llanowar Elves, your turn 2 Wildgrove Walker, and a Jade Light Ranger, keeping a Ravenous Chupacabra on top from the second Explorer. He's off to a fantastic start, as you do. He went 4-0 yesterday. I'm not surprised. He's started off well here.
Yeah, I mean, that Wild Growth Walker could prove to be a big problem for this Boros aggro list. The Boros lists, they can do 20 damage very quickly and easily, but once they start having to deal 26, 29, 32 damage, that becomes a much stickier wicket, and we're going to see whether or not he's going to be able to piece this together as Wild Growth Walker gets to get stuck in here. At some point, if the Walker decides it wants to start blocking, it has a gigantic toughness, and in the meantime, it can just attack through everything that's going on the other side of things.
Yeah, Andrea's hand is so good. He has basically everything he needs, as he has another land, a Vivian Reed, a Fine Finality, which is great in this sort of match where we can sweep the other side of the board. And I know we both know, we just saw the Ravenous Chupacabra on top. That's just going to come down, kill the Benalish Marshal, and Andrea is just going to keep on hitting. It's a great start for the Italian captain here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad draw that we're seeing from this Boros aggro list. It's just that if Mengucci had to pretty much pick the cards that he was going to be drawing in the early stages of this game, I can't imagine they would be wildly different from what we're seeing on camera here. The life total's already 22-11, and when the aggro deck, the deck that's literally got the word aggro in its name on the screen that you're watching with us around the world, my friends, that is the one that's down on life. That is not a good sign. Yeah,
and the hand from the Portuguese team in Galvao here, it's just not great. Way too many lands. I mean, Benalish, the curve was okay. Legion's landing into Adanto Vanguard, into Benalish Marshal is fine, but he was on the draw, and against such a hand as Andrea's, it's just really tough to compete. And this is one of the reasons why Golgari midrange is the most popular deck in this room. 70 teams out of 74 decided to play a Golgari mid-range. 1 out of the 4 who wasn't playing was playing Green-Black Undergrowth, and only 3 others were playing something else. And even then, I think one of them was like an Abzan Lizard. So Green-Black and ever-present across almost every team.
Good old Rock. Nothing beats it, and a little bit of an advantage now at this point for Andrea Mengucci. On the other side of things, Diogo Galvao, he's not looking in great shape here. This is his first Team Worlds. He's not got a huge amount of experience, even only a couple of GPs thus far, though he did have a solid enough start at GPC Seville a few years back. But yeah, Mengucci, this is his tournament. This is the tournament that he loves more than any other over the course of the year, and it's treated him very well over the years. Yeah,
it's very easy to forget that it's back-to-back-to-back World Magic Cup top 8s with Andrea Mengucci at the helm, and the fact that 3 years ago, their first top 8 was converted into a win alongside Marco Camiluzzi and 2 out of his teammates back then. So, and he's actually looking to be one of the only, maybe, he wants to be the first person to win 2 World Magic Cups. The only opposition he faces is Simon Nielsen, and he's in their group.
Yeah, we will see a grudge match between Italy and Denmark potentially within this group stage. And if that happens, I mean, that's going to be the end of someone's dream for winning the World Magic Cup twice. I know that Simon Nielsen, that's something he's very firmly got his sights on if he can possibly achieve it.
Yeah, and Team Denmark is also very solid, but this group is just all insane.
All right, History of Benalia coming down here for Galvao. This is a way that he's going to be able to get a few extra creatures on the board. Adanto Vanguard, Benalish Marshal for him. He's gradually hitting a point where it means that we can't really see as many easy attacks coming through from Mengucci, but we know that Mengucci has the potential to throw down a Fine Finality at some point, and when that happens, this board will get a lot cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, it's it's not looking good for Galvao here from Team Portugal, especially as Andrea added a midnight Reaper to his board last time. So even though his Jade Light Ranger traded off with the 1/1 left linking token, he just drew a card of that and learned something new. And here he's going to deploy the big Carney T.
Yeah, Carnage Tyrant, a gigantic monster that will survive finality as and when it gets cast, and in the meantime, it means that the likelihood that Galvao can get meaningful attacks in comparatively low here. I mean, in terms of if you're Galvao, what you're looking to draw, I think there's a relatively slim pickings. I mean, I guess that if you could get a big pump spell in there to get his entire team a little bit larger, he might be able to do meaningful damage, but you need to be thinking about the swing back as well.
Yeah, definitely, and this is just going to be a very difficult one. Andrea, if he decides to go for a finality, he can keep his Carnage Tyrant and Wildgrowth Walker alive, draw a bunch of cards through the Midnight Reaper, but I think just the finality would be enough. Let's see if Andrea goes for it here right away. He might decide to play it slow. Nope, it looks like 6 mana, finality, put some counters on one of my guys, scoop up the board here. And it looks like he's maybe scooping up everything here.
Everything's getting scooped up. This does not mean to say that he's accidentally killing all of his creatures. It's more a matter that his opponent, Diogo Galvao, recognizes that he's not winning that game. He's going to go on to another one. But by the looks of things, we've got a little bit of synchronized magic going on here because Marcio Carvalho, his match, game 1 already completed, which means that we're going to get a chance to see Thiago Fonseca here as the third Portuguese player looking to hopefully win something back. He is on Is It Drakes. On the other side of things, well, it's the deck that probably creates the busiest board states of any of them in Standard right now, that being Selesnya tokens.
Yeah, Selesnya tokens is also a very popular choice. I think the second most popular deck in the tournament, taking it over the Boros aggro decks or potentially mono white aggro decks. Selesnya tokens is overall very solid. Without the life totals though here, it's very hard to judge how the board is fashioned. Okay, this explains a lot because sometimes the Is It Drakes list can be extremely explosive, especially with Crackling Drakes, Enigma Drakes, and Arclight Phoenix being able to deal a lot of damage through the air, to which the Selesnya tokens don't really have a good answer to. But here we see that Moon actually used Venerated Loxodon to put a bunch of counters on his creatures. He even has some mana open, and we see that the History of Benalia is also about to hit its 3rd chapter. And I think Tianfa Moon will be able to swing for a lot of damage once he untaps.
Yeah, I mean, as things stand here, when the Is It Drakes deck is in the mid-stage of the game, often it's playing on the defensive, but it's much better in many respects at playing defensive against 1 or 2 big creatures than it is these swarms of creatures that Selesnya typically deploys. I mean, a Crackling Drake with a little bit of fuel in the graveyard can trade off with even the biggest Carnage Tyrant. Meanwhile, you get Arclight Phoenixes that you can bring them back simply to block again and again and again. Selesnya, though, it doesn't mind about 1 or 2 blockers because it's just working its way around the edges, and all of these creatures have the potential to get comparatively large very quickly.
Yeah, and in general, the Selesnya tokens deck is very consistent at what it's doing. It can pump up very wide boards very quickly, and even go a little big with things like the Venerated Loxodon, and then ultimately March of the Multitudes is the final finisher. Another Crackling Drake is really good here for Thiago Fonseca because he definitely wants to put up as many blockers as possible. And I already see at least an Opt, a Lava Coil, Tormenting Voice in the graveyard. So those Crackling Drakes are at least 3/4, maybe even 4/4. So this is good so that they can block and kill the creatures that are they face in combat.
One of the challenges with playing the Selesnya deck is that because board states frequently get as busy as they do, it means that kind of reading a board state, figuring out when to make those attacks can prove a little challenging. Obviously, you could just go for massive overkill and wait until it's so clear that you can be attacking in that there's really nothing your opponent can do. But if you want to get the full edge out of this deck, figuring out where you can sneak through those little points of damage here and there is a really key skill.
Yeah, here I wouldn't say it's going to be straightforward, but I see at least 4 creatures with 4 or more power on Moon's side of the board alongside those 2 Saprolinks. I would be, even if Moon doesn't have a Conclave Tribune or anything similar, he's swinging with everything. I like this, putting the pressure on the Is It Drakes list, flipping his Legion's Landing to improve his mana situation, and you might even see something like Trostani after combat.
So this is Fonseca electing to do the blocks that leave him with the most creatures in play for future turns. He has got a shock in hand.
Okay.
But he's going to be taking a sizable hit here in order to do so.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage. 13, I think. He's going to go down 3. Yeah, confirmed now. And while he's keeping in Crackling Drakes around, like the following turn, he will really have to start blocking with everything. At least the History of Benalia pump effect will wear off for the following attack, so those knights will only be 3/3s. So that might make the board a little bit more manageable. And Fonseca's hand is actually quite good. Shock, Lava Coil, and Radical Idea, being able to bring the Arclight Phoenix back.
He's actually very close to having lethal. There's 4 spells in the graveyard right now. I'd be tempted almost, if he's looking to win this game, to fire off an end-of-turn shock here, because that would mean he's got 5 spells in the graveyard. If he draws into another spell that he can cast next turn, then it means that he gets up to 8 spells in the graveyard. That's 16 damage plus 3 from the Arclight Phoenix, and he can just steal it.
Yeah, he thinks he has it, so he jumpstarts a Radical Idea from his graveyard. So we already have a nice instant and sorceries in the graveyard.
I mean, ultimately, whether they're in the graveyard or exiled isn't going to matter too much to these Crackling Drakes. It's more just about the total number of spells involved.
Yeah, I think he has enough here. Yeah, with the Isdefini, I think Fonseca played this really nicely, like keeping his creatures alive and recognizing the fact that he had a lot of spells in his hand, that he would be able to pop up his Crackling Drakes to a very big size. He also has a Lava Coil to get rid of Venerate Loxodon. Doesn't really matter with regards to removing the creature, but it does matter that he gets to put an instant or sorcery card in his graveyard, pump up his Crackling Drake, bring back his Arclight Phoenix, and swing for lethal.
This is what the Izzet Drakes deck was put together to do, and he's ultimately able to close it out there. I mean, in spite of huge pressure on the ground coming from the Italian side of things, ultimately that one was a win for Portugal, and now we get a chance to jump across and see how Marcio Carvalho is doing on his matchup.
Yeah, Marcio, of course, another member of the Magic Pro League, announced yesterday. One of the best players that in the past few years. A World Championship finalist and a perennial Platinum Pro. He's on Golgari mid-range. We've seen him yesterday, just a very solid player, even though he did lose to Israel in the round we covered. But he's going to facing off against Izzet Drakes on the Italian side. And usually in this matchup, it's basically said that Izzet Drakes is favored.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that in terms of meaningful interaction, the Izzet Drakes deck has a lot of ways of disrupting what's going on the other side of things. Meanwhile, it's generating flying creatures, and flying creatures are very good at getting past a large proportion of what the Golgari deck's able to deploy.
Yeah, the good thing for Marcio is here that he has the Turn Group Wild Walker into the Jade Light Ranger, which is a great way to kickstart your attacking efforts and putting in play resilient creatures that bring you incremental advantage over several turns here. And Ranger reveals the Detection Tower as well at this nice card that we saw in Marcio's deck yesterday, and already swinging for 3 on turn 3. Very important for Carvalho to be on the board quickly, because the Basilico is going to start deploying Crackling Drakes now.
And the fact that Wild Growth Walker already up to 5 toughness, also a little bit of a pain for the Izzet Drakes deck, because 4, kind of the magic number, that one means it's easily dealable with via, say, a Lava Coil. Now that Wild Growth Walker going to be much trickier to remove, and it means that the target for example, this Crackling Drake in terms of Carvalho's life total, that much harder to hit.
Yeah, a good draw from Carvalho. He drew a Rascals Contempt. I wonder if he has a second black source, because we know he has okay, he does have an Overgrown Tomb, because we only saw the Detection Tower previously. So if Carvalho wants to keep up the pressure, removing the Crackling Drake and swinging in for a bunch of damage is quite good here. For next turn, it looks like Basilico will be able to have a Crackling Drake with Dive Down backup. It's one of the key plays of this Izzet Drake's deck, that you want to protect your creatures either with spell pieces or dive downs. It looks like, yeah, there's the Rascals Contempt as I expected, and a big swing for 6 here for Marcio.
Yeah, the life totals very much in Carvalho's favour. I believe that this is game 2. We're not quite sure how game 1 finished up, but in game 2 it does appear that Carvalho in commanding position, and I'm sure that he would love to be able to rattle off 2 quick wins here so that he's also able to support the rest of his teammates. This is team competition. He is able to provide a little bit of extra bonus experience and second set of opinions on perhaps some of the key plays in these other games going forward.
Yeah, speaking of key plays now, dive down being available to Basilico means that he can protect his Crackling Drake from Ravenous Chupacabra, or maybe even a Vivian Reed. Yeah,
Vivian Reed kind of at her best in this matchup, because it's not like every matchup she has a useful target for her minus ability, but in this one pretty much all the creatures that are likely to be on the other side of the battlefield are ones that can get shot down by that Planeswalker.
Yeah, so Merfolk Branchwalker explores, reveals cast down, so Marcia did keep that one because, ooh, look at that, a Jade Light Ranger as well. That's going to pump up the Walker Walker to 6 power. So we're already going to be very massive and very hard to deal with here for Basilico, and it's swinging in right away.
Yeah, 33 life as well for Carvalho. I mean, life total's not what it's all about all the time, but right now, I mean, we saw an Is It Drake's deck kind of snatching a victory almost seemingly from nowhere in our matchup on the top table, and that is essentially impossible right now for Basilico as he looks at 33 points of life for the Portuguese.
Already handshake, so 2-0 for Marcia. That was fast.
Yeah, he was able to just rattle on through that one, and that means that Italy now going to need to win 2 on the bounce here, because ultimately this match best of 3. Just to remind you guys how it works today, right now these 2 teams, along with 2 more, those being in this group, they all have to win 2 matches in 2 sort of team matches, as it were, in order to make it through to the next stage. So if Mengucci's Italian team loses here, they're going to have to win both of their remaining matches in the pool just to be able to advance, in spite of having had a spectacular day 1.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure for this day 2 at the World Magic Cup. Only 2 teams can make it out of every pool, so half the teams advance, half the teams get eliminated. So every match does matter. And a good start for Diogo Galvao with the turn 1 Legion landing, turn 2 Ajani's Pridemate, so he's on the board very quickly. And now he might show what the Boros aggro list can really do.
Yeah, the Ajani's Pridemate, a really nice addition. It's one that we saw being played by Team Channel Fireball at the Pro Tour, and they really just appreciated the fact that there's lots of incidental life gain in these white aggro lists, and it doesn't take too long for that cat creature to get even bigger and bigger and bigger, exactly the way that you want to piece it together now. Still more life gain available, and it means that even if they do remove it, because obviously, you know, it's a 2-drop, that there are plenty of spells that will kill it, they're using a removal spell on your random 2-drop rather than on something more impactful.
Yeah. The only issue here for the Portuguese here is the fact that I think Galvao mulliganed at least once, because he's only has 1 card left in his hand after having a pretty fast start here. And now that the Ravenous Chupacabra has come down on turn 3, taking down the Pridemate, it looks like Andrea should be okay in trying to stabilize the situation. Tocatli Honor Guard is a card that has been a little bit forgotten, but it made its way back. It's great at turning off all the Explore creatures and the Chupacabra. It's just maybe a turn too late.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that I think is tailor-made for this matchup. I mean, if you look at Mengucci's hand now, he's now got a 2-mana 2/1, a 3-mana creature that's also not particularly exciting in size, and that Ravenous Chupacabra, a 4-mana 2/2. As long as the Honor Guard stays in play, all of his creatures very underwhelming, though Fine Finality may have something to say about all of this.
Yeah, and I think Andrea will be very happy to fire off the Finality. Maybe not on the following turn, but it's pretty decent value for him, because it does have that Druid of the Cowl that can survive the Finality thanks to the 2+1/+1 counters. Okay, he's not hesitating. He's sweeping the board right away. And I'm not surprised with him having Branchwalker, Jade Light Ranger, and a Chupacabra in hand. He just wants to really take advantage of the situation, especially as I said, Galvao mulliganed. He's very low on cards.
In fact, he's now living off the top of his deck here. Ajani's Pridemate joined by a Knight token thanks to History Benalia. That History Benalia will tick into its final chapter in this very next turn. But in the meantime, Druid of the Cal still on the battlefield after Fine Finality summons up a Carnage Tyrant, a 7/6 trample hexproof. Can't be countered, that not too much of a worry, but just the raw power of the big dino going to be a big worry for Galvao here.
Yeah, another History of Benalia is nice, but none of these knights are getting through either the Carnage Tyrant or the Druid of the Cal, even when the third chapter hits. So it's quite a big issue here for the Portuguese team. And here comes a Jade Light Ranger, a land, and a card in the bin. Very nice.
Well, Mengucci's in good spot for being able to level things up, but he's going to have to hope that his teammate Moon is going to be able to win things back with Selesnya tokens, because even if Mengucci does get the 2-0 here, it could potentially not be enough if these It Drakes are able to take things in the air.
Yeah, so Reclamation Stage is also a nice sideboard card for out of the Golgari Majoring deck. A lot of targets among the Boros aggro list. There's Legion's Landing, History of Benalia, and Experimental Frenzy from the sideboard if they decide to bring it. Yeah, and looks like Galvao has had enough.
All right, we have one match left in this big sort of Battle of the Titans almost, really, between Italy and Portugal here. We're going to get a chance to see, well, it's going to be kind of a 3-on-3, a hive mind on each side, providing the best information they can, the best sort of help and guidance and so on. Though I would guess, given the performances of these teams thus far, that they've been able to get a fair ways without needing too much help from their team. If you're having to rely on your teammates for every decision, then sooner or later you're just not getting a whole lot done.
Yeah, definitely. And it's no surprise that the two pros on each team have managed to get the 2-0 win. So it's going to come down to the less experienced players, Gianframono of Italy and Thiago Fonseca. Even though I think Thiago's Fonseca fairly, has played some PTs before.
Yeah, he's got 5 PTs under his belt, which is a pretty happy man. He's played in one World Magic Cup before, the World Championship 2011, finished 24th there. As things stand, he's taking the early hits here from an Adanto Vanguard. The Adanto Vanguard, pretty resilient to a lot of removal, and here comes a flower from Moon in order to potentially just mean that his mana is going to be sorted in the early to mid stages of this game.
This was like a bit of a tell. It was fairly obvious that the Portuguese did have a counterspell here, because it looked like Thiago Fonseca wanted to have the Flower Flourish resolve, but he was stopped by his teammate, and they played in the gate on the flower. But there was another land from the Italians and a Sapperling Migration into board. Now Goblin Electromancer. Let's see if Thiago has some instance to leverage that.
I mean, this would be a great turn for a Venerated Loxodon. There's not too much going on the other side of the board, and being able to get your creatures that little bit larger would obviously be quite a welcome addition. Adanto Vanguard just chipping in here. The Goblin Electromancer not too interested in blocking that one, and March of the Multitudes in the back. At some point it will be huge, but it might be, at least for now. There we see it. History of Benalia. Get some more tokens on the battlefield. Ooh. It'll mean that the Kavoka on that March of the Multitude, all the better. Yeah,
it does resolve as well. I think Gianframono was surprised himself that this didn't get spell pierced or negated here. And so now Fonseca has to build a little bit from the back here. Has an opt at least to get something going. I did see an Arclight Phoenix in there. I think he drew a Murmuring Mystic as well. That's at least a decent blocker against the Adanto Vanguard. Oh, but it starts off with a Crackling Drake first, which was another Arclight Phoenix.
Crackling Drake currently a 2/4, only going to get larger as these games go on.
Yeah, this is tense. And now with Fonseca tapped out, I wouldn't be surprised to see something like a main phase March of the Multitude, so to get 5 creatures, 5 extra life creatures in play to set up for a big attack on the following turn.
Yeah, I guess it's something that, while it's lovely to play your instance at the end of your opponent's turn, keep them guessing, if the reason that you're doing that is in order to maybe pressure them and be able to resolve spells, you can resolve your spell right now. Just get it done, and then worry about what you're going to do next turn when that comes around.
But it looks like he's just going to go for a Sapperling Migration here.
I mean, that one's essentially mana neutral when it comes to casting your March of the Multitudes, because March of the Multitudes does have Convoke.
Yeah, I think the Italians really wanted to land here because they'd have Ixalan's Binding in their hand, so they would have loved to exile the Crackling Drake. But okay, Sapperling Migration into March of the Multitude. I mean, it's going to create the same amount of creatures here, so you're going to get 5 life linkers, I believe, and next turn is going to be very interesting here for the Italian team. Let's see what the Portuguese have going on here. Okay, quite a bit going on there. Double Arclight Phoenix, Crackling Dig, Murmuring Mystic, and Shock. No fifth land though. They would have liked to play maybe the Mystic and be able to shock one of the Knights.
Yeah, a lot of 4-drops in that hand, and if you play the Crackling Drake to draw a card, that means that you're not going to be playing any of the other things that maybe key off casting spells a little bit better. Murmuring Mystic plus Shock would have been lovely. Get a creature on the battlefield, a spare creature thanks to the Shock, and remove something on the other side of things. This is going to be a big set of attacks potentially coming along from Moon next turn. At this point, if I'm him, I'm swinging for the fences and saying I really don't mind losing a token or two here and there. Yeah. His History of Benalia will be going off next turn, so even that Crackling Drake, if it wants to block the maximum amount of damage, it's going to be going down in the process.
Yep. This is a very tough spot for the Portuguese here, who are basically, this is match point for them. If Thiago Fonseca would win this game, they would advance to 1-0 in their pool and really set themselves up for advancing into the next stage. So Crackling Drake, is it a red? Ooh, it is a mountain.
All right, now we're talking. So now we get a chance to cast a Shock somewhere in the mix here, and no real reason to wait around on that. Don't want to see more pump spells coming to the other side of things. Deals with one of those Knights, meaning that the efficacy of that final chapter of History of Benalia dropping just a touch.
Yeah, that was a big draw there from the Portuguese here. The History of Benalia pops off now, so at least one of the Knights is pumped up to 4-3.
Crackling Drake now a 3-4 though, thanks to the extra spell in the graveyard as well, so it will be able to meaningfully trade.
Yeah, swing with everything, he says.
How much damage is coming through here?
Quite a bit. I think it's 9. It's 2 from the Knight, 3 from the unblocked Lifelinkers, and then 4 from the Saprolings.
A little bit of extra life for Moon as well, as he has made quite a few life-linking soldiers in the process here.
Yeah, this is why the Untitled Vanguard is so nice. When you keep attacking and you're gaining a little bit of life here and there, it's very easy to just keep giving it an indestructible, keeping the creature on the board, even if your opponent has blockers. So looks like this combat is going to resolve here and put Fonseca down to 5, if I'm counting correctly.
For now, at least, Is It Drakes will need to stay on the defensive, methinks.
Yeah, so there's an activation of the Vanguard as they now figure out how much damage is coming through here. Yep, the two of the soldiers, lifelinking soldiers, will die while leaving both creatures fine on the other side of the board. Okay. I forgot about the History of Benalia pumping up the Knight to a 4-3. So it was actually 2 more damage than I counted at first. So Fonseca down to 3
And unfortunately, when you count up the number of creatures that Moon has on his side of the battlefield, he has plenty enough overlap to deal 3 points of damage. So it's going to be down to Fonseca here to either generate more blockers or indeed remove some creatures. Murmuring Mystic plus something would do all of that all in one go. But it's in fact another Crackling Drake to draw more cards for Fonseca here.
Yeah, it's not going above. He has a land and another Electromancer, but it's only there will be only 5 blockers, and there's far more creatures on one side of the board, which means that now it's basically Fonseca trying to bluff with 2 mana open with an Electromancer. Maybe it's a Fiery Cannonade or something that he can try to bluff, but I don't think the Italians with Tian Famun at the helm are going to take the bait here. They're just going to swing with everything, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing that if you choose to play around that, then I think you're opening far more doors to your opponent's victory than if you simply assume that it's not there and swing for the fences. So this will be Moon, hopefully, as far as Team Italy is concerned, putting things absolutely even Stevens and making it this entire matchup coming down to one deciding game.
Yeah, now it looks like I think that's Andrea's hand just motioning. Look, he's going to block these 4 creatures. He might be able to deal with 1 or 2. Yeah, just swing with everything. They didn't even play a land in Ixalan's Binding from their hand, which is I think a smart. They're not showing that they're bringing in that particular spell in this matchup. So maybe obscuring a little bit of information from the Portuguese. And now the decider. Match 3, game 3.
And you can see Andrea Mengucci, he just picks up the deck and says, I'm going to have a little think about sideboarding here, guys. You can spend your time doing what you need to. We've got on the other side of things, Marcio Carvalho. He's just kind of tidying up the way that his match went. He was far more keen on getting across to help his teammates than making sure that he put his deck away after his victory, which I guess kind of makes sense. Priorities and all that. But it will be one game to decide it all. Ultimately, even for the team that loses this, they just still have a chance of making out of the pool play. But this is a very, very difficult pool to be in indeed. Denmark also in this pool. They are another team that's very hungry to find themselves in the latter stages of this tournament.
As well as Austria. I mean, Austria is one of my early favorites for the team, with Emanuel Gerstensson and Elias Kocher being gold-level pros, and Mark Mühlbach having plenty of experience at the GP level. So I think they were also quite motivated. They all had to win the last round yesterday to advance. They weren't quite happy with how things were going, but yeah, they made it to pool play in this group of death, the pool of death.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation that these pool plays end up generating, which is to say that regardless of how well your day one went, the pressure is on from the get-go, and it really doesn't let up at any stage of this tournament. Even if it works out that, let's say, for example, Italy won this round, they then are in a position of, well, they had to win one of the next 2 rounds to advance. Even if they win that round, yes, they get a round off, but then they're back into another pool with a very similar set of incentives for them. So each and every one of these rounds in day 2 really mattering a great deal. It's not like sometimes we say when it comes to day 2 of a GP, where in the early stages of a day 2, I mean, you're not really winning or losing too much. Like, you obviously you want to keep winning, but there's potentially a little bit of flexibility as to where your losses come.
Sure.
If you get 2 losses in a row at any point on this day 2, you're out.
Yeah, that's the important thing. 2 wins, you're in. 2 losses, you're out. It's basically that's how the math works in those pools. So, it's still fairly early in the morning. We saw a very big yawn from Andrea Mengucci there, as they need to wake up a little bit. Look at that, Tian Van Moon also.
I mean, these guys had more time to rest than everyone else. They went 4-0 in the early stages of yesterday, and essentially they could have spent much of their afternoon on Friday just kind of chilling out, relaxing, getting a feel for the city, having a look round, and maybe, you know, playing a few games of standard just to keep their hands in.
Yeah. It looks like Andrea did not get as much sleep as he wanted, though.
I mean, Andrea always strikes me as the sort of person that if you ask him if he got enough sleep as he wanted, he'd say no, because he would take 20 hours if you'd give it to him.
All right, but now he's back. He's focused. Took a short break here, and we're going to have a look at what's happening.
Well, there's at least 2 copies of Shock in the hand of Fonseca, Thiago Fonseca on the right of our screen. And the early interaction there, potentially helpful, but has to take a mulligan. Oh, so tough when the whole of your team, and indeed the whole of your country, relying on you to find the wins here.
Yeah, and I mean, it was an unkeepable hand. Double Shock, but only a single mountain with a bunch of blue spells alongside him. It just, that's definitely mulligan here. And Tian Van Moon, I think I saw a very interesting card in his hand, and maybe one of the reasons why Andrea picked up the deck and sideboard. He brought in Cellular Wreckage.
Ooh.
Which is a card I talked about yesterday. These Celestial Token mirror matches are very complicated, so it's possibly a very useful card to have in those situations where your opponent is just ahead on the board and has like more pump spells. His creatures are just bigger, and you can settle him out of the game. It's decent against Boros aggro as well, especially if they have flyers. Especially Aurelia is very annoying to deal with. And in this matchup, we saw in game 1. It's like the board swung very fast in Fonseca's favor with those Crackling Drakes and Arglike Phoenixes coming back.
I mean, the thing with Izzet Drakes is it doesn't really have all that many threats in terms of sort of pure raw numbers. So if you manage to exile a couple of Arglike Phoenixes and maybe get a Drake in there as well, they're having to dig fairly deep to find more threats.
Yeah. The only downside of this for this Lesson Token deck is that Fonseca brought in the negate, so it's not like Thiago is unprepared for something like Cellular Wreckage, and he has a decent starter here. Turn 2 Electromancer, and I think he has a Charter Course in his hand as well, so he's going to be well placed. But it looks like Moon's hand's also looking decent there. With the History of Benalia and the Saproning Migration. So he's going to be able to get on the board fairly quickly here.
Now, I think that the single biggest card that I'm thinking of when it comes to Fonseca's side of things is, does he have a way of dealing with lots of small creatures all in one go? Because that is where potentially the wheels can really come off for the Selesnya Tokens list. against red, there is the potential that we can see some mass removal. And mass removal against the Selesnya tokens deck really takes a lot of the wind out of their sails. They put a lot of work into making a wide board, and if that work ends up getting stymied, then they can struggle to come back from it. So we'll see soon enough. I mean, ultimately, first of all, Mun needs to put lots of tokens on the board before there's any need for Fonseca to react. But if he does react, then this could be a little bit of a problem for Team Italy.
Yeah, so this game is a little stymied on both sides because Fonseca does not have a third land, so he just, the first Electromancer that got exiled with the Baffling Hand, replaced with another one. Now I think he's going to play the Charter Course for 1 mana, trying to dig for some mana. Okay, starts with Discovery first. Already found a Sulphur Falls and I think another Charter Course. On Moon's side, he did flower into Plains, but he does have History of Benalia, actually 2 copies in his hand, but he doesn't have the second Plains, so he can't really deploy his marquee enchantment here.
Yeah, I mean, the cards in Moon's hand will be fantastic as and when he gets the appropriate lands to be able to cast them all, but for now, he's not able to be as explosive as maybe he might want. And when we look at the other side of things at Fonseca's hand, he does have a Fiery Cannonade. If it works out that Moon isn't able to get one of his big Anthem effects, one of his big ways of pumping his team up, he could find that he loses all of those non-pirates to one big Fiery Cannonade. And if that happens, then I have to say that things favouring Portugal.
We don't need the spell counter played so far. Arclight Phoenix is in the graveyard, but it might be a little bit of time before we see him it being returned. And now Moon has to decide. They did draw Temple Garden, so now they have to decide of how they want to play this. Unfortunately, they can't really play History of Benalia and the Venerated Loxodon that they have, but I think they will still deploy the enchantment and start churning out those knights here.
It's the first knight coming along with the History of Benalia. This, one of the reasons to play white these days, just such a powerful enchantment. Generating a couple of tokens, pumping them up, just you're getting a lot of value for one card, and the price that you're paying for those 2/2/2 knights, very low indeed.
Yeah, let's see if there's a fourth land for... no fourth land for Fonseca. He really would have loved to have any sort of land there for to start deploying those Crackling Jays, which we saw were so important in Game 1. Going to start with the Charter Course. He might be able to bring back the Arclight Phoenix if he so desires.
I mean, Charter Course, when you're only paying 1 mana for it, very exciting indeed. It's become one of the go-to card drawing spells in blue just because digging 2 cards deep with just a single card at 2 mana, very solid indeed.
But I think now is a very tough spot for Fonseca. He does have another Charter Course, a radical idea as well, that he might already be thinking about playing the Fire Cannonade. Remember, it's discounted by 1 mana thanks to the Electromancer, and especially if Moon would decide to go for something like the Venerated Loxodon, having Fiery Cannonade to take care of the creatures before those counter gets placed on them is actually very important. So very, very tough situation for the Portuguese, but at least they have Marcio Carvalho helping out his teammates.
Yeah, and this is exactly the kind of judgment call where having a top-level pro on your side is really, really valuable, because whether or not you dig more, whether or not you want to just play the removal, it's not an easy decision. Conveniently, it looks like Steam Vents is picked up by Fonseca, so at least his desire to dig for now abated. History of Benalia generating another knight token there.
Indeed, so he decided not to play anything else on his turn to bring back the Phoenix. He's leaving up all his mana open.
There's time for these Phoenixes. I don't think that this Izzet Drake's deck here necessarily needs to be really aggressively going at Moon's life total in the short term, because everything scales with this deck. As you gradually get to the point where you've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, however many spells in the graveyard, all of your threats become terrifying. It's just a matter of getting to the stage where that is true. And treading water is much better for Fonseca here, I would say, than for the Selesnya tokens list.
So there's a swing with 1 on the Knights, and now is the crucial turn. Another land picked up from Moon here. He drew 2 white sources in a row. That's good for him, and his hand's looking...
Passes
very
back
solid.
there. Very
wow.
disciplined play here. It's almost as if these teams, they're just sort of they've got their hive mind working, and neither of them is going to give up an easy edge to the other. Fiery Cannonade here, I mean, honestly, could be a lot worse for Moon. Ultimately, that Fiery Cannonade, it's dealt with 2 spells.
Yeah, and actually in this spot, the Cannonade is great because this instant speed removal spell is quite good against the March of the Multitudes, because there's no way you can't really convoke mana to play out that March of the Multitude. So with that resolving and our Crackling Drake coming down, Moon can only really play March of the Multitudes for 2, which is just not really great in this spot. And he might actually wait to deploy his Veneralax Loxodon. Nope, goes for the March for 2. I think that's just because he wants to be able to play on his turn a History of Benalia and the Venerated Loxodon to really step on the board in a significant way.
He's got to rebuild where he can. That first History of Benalia, turns out the last chapter wasn't very good. You know, we started reading it seemed like it had promise, but then a bit of a weak ending. Maybe this second History of Benalia will be a little stronger.
So already we're going to find a knight, and the big Loxodon is going to come down this turn as well, I anticipate. Moon drawing a bunch of lands here after struggling a little bit there in the early game. So there's the Venerated Loxodon. Improves all the other creatures on the board here. But I think Fonseca is now in quite decent shape now that he was able to deploy the one Crackling Drake, being able to follow with another one. The only problem for him that he's running a little bit low on cards. Fortunately for him, he has some radical ideas in his graveyard.
Yeah, already 1 Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard. He can use Radical Idea to dig a little deeper, and if he is able to get to a point where that Phoenix comes in play, then he's representing a 2-turn clock here on what's going on the other side of things. A second copy of Crackling Drake will potentially shorten that. Let's see what his follow-ups are.
So Tormenting Voice, discarding a land, digging a little bit deeper here. Only 2 spells played so far, and I think that's that's where we're going to end. But already 7 power. Actually, Fonseca might do what he did previously. Maybe try to win in 2 big swings here. He can maybe swing with his Crackling Drake for 7 here, leave the other one on defense, weather the storm, and then try to attack for lethal on the following turn, despite Moon maybe having some lifelinkers available.
Now there's 1 card in Moon's hand, and it's a pretty big one in terms of how this plan is ultimately going to play out. At 18 life, he is obviously looks like he could be in trouble to these Drakes, and it's going to come down to whether or not Team Portugal and Marcio leading the way on this are able to sniff out exactly what's going on. This is not by any means a sideboard card that you would expect to see every single time, but equally I feel like it's the hallmark card for, well, I've definitely got this one, what do I need to play around?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen plenty of good cellular wreckages. LSV can tell us a little bit about that in the last PT, so we might see another huge cellular wreckage being played on the following turn, but let's see how this pans out. I anticipate that the Italians are going to swing with all of their creatures. Yeah,
and swinging with all these creatures, it does a lot to disguise what's going on here, because it's like, oh, I'm going to gain some life because I need this life link. I mean, obviously, also would love to get a little bit of damage in also, but yeah, a big swing here doesn't necessarily give loads away. You've got cards in hand, but you know that could easily just be like there. I guess that it means that there's maybe not a March of the Multitudes, but yeah, this seems like a good spot for a big swing here.
It's a big swing for 8, gains 4 life for Moon, which is just 1 outside of the range of the Crackling Drake. So the Portuguese, they have to know they're very close. I think there's actually no instant or sorcery in their hand just yet. Now drew a Chart of Course. That's going to kickstart the efforts. So that's what they want to find, a Murmuring Mystic. No negate though. Are they going to run into the Zelda wreckage?
Definitely possible here. We have a big decision point for Portugal.
Oh, I think they're yeah. So Electromancer first. They're trying to dig for something here. Maybe they're onto the Zelda record. They might know about it. Is there a negate? No, another land. Digging again with another radical idea. This can bring back the Phoenix as well. Was that a negate?
And if it was, this could be the ball game for Portugal here.
Oh my God! Swing with everything for 1,000,000 damage. There's a settled direction, but it is the negate of the second radical idea, and Portugal have sneaked this game, and there's the handshake. Wow!
It was incredibly close there. I mean, in terms of what Portugal had going on, I think that there was every reason for them to at least consider going for those attacks even without the negate. But once they had the negate, it meant that they knew that they were completely safe from everything that was going on. Goblin Electromancer was going to mean that they had enough mana available to play that key piece of counter magic, and sometimes Settle the Wreckage isn't good enough, and when it's not good enough, it tends to be that the game is over very quickly indeed.
Yeah, let me just say what just happened there. The Portuguese team top deck Charter Course, so they could start digging in deeper into the deck, playing one radical idea, second radical idea, and the last card was the negate for the Settle the Wreckage. It was incredible. What a match to start of the day.
What a start to the day, and congratulations to Portugal. Of course, they're not through the group stages yet. The key mnemonic that we have on this one: win 2 and you're through. Lose twice. That's not going to be so nice.
No, definitely not. But phew, that was a roller coaster ride. I need to recover from this. Wow.
Well, we are going to have some more magic. We'll have a brief moment of recovery. We will have our deciding matches from some of our other tables from pool play ready for you after these messages.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Rich, Tim and Matej here. We've just seen Italy against Portugal. Great match. The rest of that pool, Denmark played Austria. The Austrians won. So that means Austria will face Portugal to decide who goes through. The loser of that match will have another go in round 3. Meanwhile, Italy and Denmark at 0 and 1 will face each other. One of them will get eliminated. Matej, why is that so significant, Italy and Denmark?
Well, Italy has Andrea Mengucci. Denmark has Simon Nielsen. They're the only 2 World Magic Cup winners from the past years. And they both talked about wanting to be the only person to win 2 titles. And now they get to face off against each other.
Right.
How appropriate.
Yeah, so one of them will not be winning for sure, and they can take care of business by wielding the dagger themselves, the jousting lance, as it were. All right, so great stuff. Down on the floor, we have a very happy Marcio Carvalho with an always very happy Maria Bartholdi.
All right, Brian David Marshall here with Marcio Carvalho, the captain of Team Portugal. Marcio, I know you like to control your own fate, but you had to sit there and watch your teammate. Tell me what's going through your mind on that crazy last couple turns of the game.
Yeah, the last game was crazy because we thought we were going to win because we had Fury Kanane to kill all his ward. Then we come back with Cackling Drakes to attack him for the win. So we thought it was safe. So we thought maybe he has Conclave Tribunal and we don't win, but he doesn't do it. He just attack and we blocked and we think, okay, we won. Then we untap, we draw, we go for the motions, and then he radical idea, discard cards, and then he draw negate. And I'm like, we still didn't play a land, right? And he said, yeah, no. So we played the land, but thinking about, well, there's no problem. Then we attack, and the guy goes settle, and we're like, negate. And like insane top deck. I thought we couldn't lose because I didn't thought green white would play settles, but Thiago top decked, so he carried us for the win. And this win is very important because this is a tough group, maybe the toughest of this second day. So let's hope we win 2 more.
If you're a soccer or football fan, as you would probably prefer to call it, you would call this the pool of death, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't saw all the other groups, but this spot is really tough. All the teams are great.
So you got one win down. You got 1 more to go. You'll be either facing against Austria or Denmark.
Yes, Austria or Denmark, both great teams. So we hope we can match and win.
Now, crazy weekend for you. Also, you just found out that you are going to be a member, or we just found out. You've known for a little while. Yeah. We just found out that you're going to be a member of the MPL. This means you're going to be streaming. And Marcio Carvalho, a draft master, obviously at the World Championship. Will you be bringing us your draft mastery on Arena?
Of course, I'm just going to stream all drafts, maybe some constructing in the middle, but it will be mainly focused on drafts. So if you want to watch, I'll be there every week.
Awesome. Congratulations on your win. 1 more to go, and congratulations on the MPL.
Thank you, guys.
You know, truthfully, that sentence, I'll be there every week, is a huge part of Magic's future, because I'm sure you've been playing for a very long time, Tim. I know you have, Matej, as well. When I started playing, I'll be there every month. You'd go to your monthly tournament in the church hall, and then you'd put your cards away, and 3.5 weeks later, you'd dig them out again, ready to go to the very next tournament you could attend. And
yeah, it's one of the biggest innovations since Magic Online. I mean, that was the moment where suddenly you could play 10, 20, 30, 40 matches rather than 6 every 6 weeks or something.
Exactly.
And now we suddenly get a chance to enjoy streaming on such a regular basis. It's incredible.
Yeah, and so we'll hear lots more from our MPL players through the weekend for sure. But congratulations to Portugal. They're 1 win away. We know that they will face Austria in the next round. But on the back table, well, that's our decider table. Once a match goes to 1-1, and we know it all comes down to this, we get to put it on camera. So let's see where we're going to head. We're going to take you now down to the back table, and this is going to be the Philippines against South Korea. So South Korea on the left of screen with Ho Jae Han. Reynald Abella is on the right of your screen. So let's see what happens here. Who advances to 1-0? Who puts themselves into the losers bracket at 0-1? Here's Tim and Matej once again.
Thank you, Rich. So it looks like Abella here off to the earlier start, getting points on the board early, though missing on his Explore, depending on how you look at it. He doesn't get the +1/+1 counter, does get the land in hand. On the other side of things, Jade Light Ranger, with the double Explore, sees a Vraska on top.
Yeah, and that's a card that's decent in these Golgari mid-range mirrors, because at worst case it can come down and kill one creature, and if it's protected, it can actually take over the game quite significantly. So tough decisions for Ho Jae Han here, and these Golgari mirror matches are really something. They're haymaker after haymaker, the advantage swing from one side to the other. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of these over the next 2 days.
Yeah, and to put in context this exact match, the other two teams in the group with South Korea and the Philippines, that's Sweden and France. So getting the points on the board early here, getting the match win now, means that whichever team is winning, well, they just need to beat one of those two other teams, both of whom have some pretty serious pro power on their teams. Or alternatively, you have to beat both of them if you lose out here.
Yeah, and I already have an update actually from that match. France defeated Sweden in the other pool, so the winner of this game will get to play France in the next round for advancing into the last 16.
Yeah, I mean, the Jean-Emmanuel Deprat on the French team, he is also one of our 32 players that will be in the Pro League. And here comes Rascals Contempt. It's a Vraska theme deck on the left-hand side of things between the Golgari Queen and her Contempt coming along. And that meaning that in the early stages of this game, things kind of a little bit in favor of Ho Jae Han. But honestly, this is one of those matchups where, because so many cards have so much utility built into them, small edges aren't really where it is going to get decided, at least early.
Yeah, I mean, playing Rascals Contempt on Midnight Rip is fine, but this matchup a lot of times comes down to things like Vivian Reed or other big planeswalkers or creatures. So Ho Jae Han not really advancing his board is actually okay news for Reynald Abella here, who deploys the Jade Light Ranger of his own, finds a Forest, finds a Carnage Tyrant.
Carnage Tyrant is potentially one of the mirror breakers. It's one of the cards that are a little bit more difficult to deal with. Though it must be said that the Golgari mid-range deck sometimes can simply deploy sufficient blockers that you settle for a 2-for-1 rather than anything else, throwing a couple of monsters in the way of that big old dinosaur boy.
Yeah, he did keep the Carnage Tyrant on top because his hand seems okay. He does have another land. I saw a cast down of Rascals Contempt, so he has enough removal to maybe try to stall out the board to play that big Carnage Tyrant so that he can rumble on down the battlefield. But speaking of Carnage Tyrant, I think Ho Jae Han might even have two in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, Carnage Tyrant advantage, one of the easy ways that this game can potentially play out. Sometimes we see the likes of Vivian Reed going all the way up to Ultimate being a way to close out the game. Otherwise, drawing copies of Fine Finality, another good way of finding yourself a little bit ahead in this Golgari mid-range mirror.
Yeah. Now it looks like Ho Jae Han is thinking about playing the Vraska. And probably is going to minus on that Jade Light Ranger.
Yeah, I mean, Vraska's abilities, they're all kind of interesting in this matchup. At the point that you've got lots of lands in play, suddenly just being able to sacrifice excess lands, draw cards, gain life can be very potent. Occasionally we do see the ultimate of Vraska even closing games out.
Yeah.
Far more frequently, though, it's some combination of using that +2 ability alongside the -3, sort of keeping that loyalty vaguely balanced to remove key threats, but also draw additional cards.
Yeah. It looks like Ho Jae Han is just thinking what he wants to do with this because he knows. I think he knows about the cast down in Abella's hand from the Branchwalker Explorer. So he knows that if he kills one of Abella's creatures, the Jade Light Ranger to be more precise, if he leaves his Jade Light Ranger back to block to maybe try to prevent his Vraska from dying, it's not really going to succeed. But it actually might be an okay plan because at least it will mean that Abella will not be able to deploy something big. Okay, so he just decides to attack first. That's also a valid plan. This in a way is trying to bait Abella into blocking with the Jade Light Ranger, which means that Ho Jae Han would then kill the Branchwalker and leave the battlefield clear of creatures, which is great for any Planeswalker.
Yeah, the sequencing on this, a little unusual. It's one of those things that, in some respects, playing the Vraska gives a little bit more information to Reynald about how he wants to block here. But as things stand, it's a strange old position here. Essentially, by doing it this way round, he's pretty much said, I'm going to get free damage through, because he's presented a much stronger reason for Abella not to block, and it may be that Team South Korea has decided that actually just getting damage on the board early is one of the ways to win this matchup.
Yeah, plus in the end, without sacrificing anything is fine, because that just means that Vraska is not going to die, can take only 5 damage from the 2 more folk there. So it was actually a very interesting sequence of play, like Ho Jae-han basically revealing what he's about to do, and leaving Reynald Abella with a bunch of decisions. So looks like Abella has seen enough. He might Rascals Contempt the Vraska. How ironic.
Yeah, you know, maybe she just looked in a mirror.
Yeah. I wonder how that works with Gorgons.
Well, I mean, you know, canonically, they normally, the way that you fight a Gorgon is you only look at it through mirrors. So I presume that the mirror sight of Gorgons doesn't work, but you know, maybe it works differently in Ravnica. Who knows?
She doesn't turn herself into stone when she's grooming her snakes in the morning.
Potentially not. So Rascals Contempt does get rid of the Golgari Queen, and now Ho Jae-han left with not a whole lot on his board here. Going to have to rebuild. If he's got the 6th land, we may be hitting Tyrant time.
Yeah, Carney T in the house.
What a time of the day to be living in. Here is the first Carnage Tyrant of the game. It will not be the last. It would not surprise me at all. Hey, look, Mum, it's twins.
It's like a brother from another mother in this situation, and I think the twin is going to be played by Ho Jae on his turn, because he has another Carnage Tyrant in his hand.
What's the collective noun for Carnage Tyrants?
A crash of tyrants.
I mean, it's a crash of rhinos, and
yeah.
I think these tyrants are a bit noisier than a crash. We might need to figure something out. Sound off in the chat if you've got any suggestions.
A torrent of tyrants.
A torrent of tyrants. I like it.
I'm proud of myself for that one.
Only for 3 or more. So we'll see whether or not we get that torrent. For now, we just have a couple of tyrants. No biggie.
It's going to be a 3rd one hitting the board soon enough, I believe.
Ho Jae-han here, he was the first one to get a dinosaur on the battlefield. That means that he kind of controls the tempo a little bit. Reynald Abella just says, yeah, I'm willing to trade off here. I mean, there's not too many ways to 1-for-1 against a Carnage Tyrant, so taking that opportunity, though, Ho Jae even offering it up kind of potentially telegraphed a little bit that there might be some more dinos are coming.
Yeah, it was a family affair there when the dinos tussled there, and look at that, another Carnage Tyrant from Reynald Abella there.
So that's 4 consecutive turns where we've seen a Carnage Tyrant cast. It turns out that neither of these teams wanting to give an inch when it comes to dinosaur advantage.
Yeah. Dinosaur fans rejoice. Not much else going on. The one good advantage for Reynald is that he has the Memorial to Folly advantage, so he can bring back one of those dinos. And I think Ho Jae-han has been drawing a bit too many lands there, so just a pass with so much mana open. Now I think Abella is going to gain the initiative here.
I mean, another thing that we could potentially see at some point, if one of these players manages to find a copy of Find, I mean, Finality is obviously very potent, but when you're getting back 2 Carnage Tyrants, it may be that the cheaper side of Finality, the Find half to get back 2 Carnage Tyrants, is even better.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think Abella still has that cast down, I believe. Oh, but doesn't play just yet. Just swings it with his Jade Light Ranger.
Getting a few points of damage in here and there where he can.
Yeah, he might have a different plan. No, just pass for now. Let's see if Ho Jae-han can match this board.
As always on these deciding games, essentially you have the whole team of 3 on either side of the table trying to provide whatever help they can. Nam Sung-wook of South Korea, one of the key players that's got a little bit more experience than the rest of the guys in this particular match in terms of potentially providing a little bit more support, a little bit more insight from sort of the pro on the team.
There's Jade Light Ranger. So first ruling Midnight Reaper. It's decent on this board. It doesn't get killed, or even if it does with a non-exiling effect, it can just draw you another card, which is always nice. Is he going to keep it? He's going to keep it. It's going to mean that Jade Light Ranger is 4-3. Another big one on the board.
Well, a whole bunch of exploring going on here. Each of these players have lands, but now we see, that first Memorial to Folly getting back a Carnage Tyrant. So essentially this will be the 5th Carnage Tyrant we've seen cast this game, and it's the last fatty that kills you.
Yeah.
So if this is the one that's able to stick around, then it will mean that Ho Jae-han in a lot of trouble here.
Yeah. There's the Carnage Tyrant and a swing with the tiny Jade Light Ranger, pecking away at Ho-Jae-Han, who's not willing to trade his bigger creatures with the small Jade Light Ranger just yet.
There is still time, at least for now, though. Ho-Jae-Han staring down a dinosaur will have to find something relatively quickly here if he's going to make sure that he's able to stay in this race.
We know about the Midnight Reaper, and it's going to be actually decent on this board. If you're facing up against Carnage Tyrants, you don't have anything any of your own. It just means that you want some creatures with at least 3 power, so you can double block the Carnage Tyrant, maybe triple block if you have enough toughness as well.
And the idea of double blocking with Midnight Reaper being in the mix is that at least, even if you're accepting the notion of getting 2 for 1, you get some of that value back in the cards that you draw.
Yeah, but now Ho-Jae-Han is out of tricks here. There's the Midnight Reaper on. It's probably on the stack here, and Reynald, we know about the cast down, so he's thinking about taking down maybe one of the Jade Light Rangers in response. But I think he might be better placed at trying to wait until he attacks with the Carnage Tyrant to basically force Ho-Jae-Han to triple block. Now he kind of now gave it away that he has a removal spell, even though I still think it was revealed off the Explorer in the early game, so Ho-Jae-Han knows about it anyway.
This is one of those times that potentially having a team of 3 people working together can be a little bit more difficult, because it's much more difficult to mask that you've got an important piece of interaction in your hand when you've got 2 teammates who, with the best will in the world, they want to help, but them sort of saying, have you thought about such and such, might actually end up giving away a key piece of information.
All right, so cast down in response to the Midnight Reaper takes down one of the Jade Light Rangers. And Reina Labella put in the card in the back of his hand, and now he's going to squeeze it very slowly.
He's not trying to hold it away from our card spotters. It's more a matter of he's trying to make sure his teammates don't see it potentially to give away a bit of information.
Okay, another Jade Light Ranger finds a Chupacabra. I think he's going to keep that one. I think he also drew a Memorial to Folly, and he might just wait one more turn before attacking here.
Yeah, this is a nice position to be in if you're Team Philippines. Yes, the life totals very slightly favour your opponents, but the board very much for the right-hand side of our screen there, which is Team Philippines and Reynald Abea.
Yep, so Ho-Jae-Han now basically in top deck mode. Needs something good here.
Well, he's found something, tapping a fair amount of mana.
Vivian? Yep.
There is Vivian Reed. So she effectively lets him spin the wheel again to try and find some key creatures.
Yeah, so he's going to dig at least for some creature that he can cast here.
I mean, Lamoire Elves, not overly exciting. It's that, or, well, the Memorial to Folly is actually quite a lot more interesting here.
Yeah, also I think there might be a Branch Walker, but we can't quite see all the cards. But I think it was double Lamoire Elves, Branch Walker and Memorial to Folly. It's actually some decisions to be made here. Taking the Memorial is quite nice if you want to go with the Carnage Tyrant plan, but is he going to go for it? No, he's going to go for the Branch Walker. It's a bit more of a safer play, I would say.
Yeah, get some bodies on the board now so that the likelihood that your blocking is going to work out a little higher, because, of course, we have seen the Ravenous Chupacabra on top thanks to the Explorer of Jade Light Ranger.
Yeah, there's another Midnight Reaper. I'm not sure if Ho-Jae-Han is going to want that one. No, he's going to keep it or not. Still deciding. Remember, the captain from the South Korean team is Nam Sun-wook, a well-known South Korean player known for his Pro Tour journey into Knicks in 2014, top 8. It's his best result, and solid, very well-respected player. Tested with a bunch of the other Asian players such as Li Shitian, Calvin Chu, and the others. So definitely a solid captain to have on your team.
Yeah, tight-knit group of players that travel to the Pro Tours together and will have been helping each other out for this World Magic Cup. Also, there we can see his stats. 13 Pro Tours played. Nam Sung-wook, the 36-year-old, with pretty successful run at the Pro Tour level. All right, Reynald Labella here. He's the one with the initiative, and his Carnage Tyrant here definitely representing a bit of a problem. I mean, yes, I guess Vivian Reed is something that you do need to think about getting rid of, because if it ticks up to Ultimate, you find yourself in hot water. But as things stand, it feels like Reynald should have the permanents to do it. That Ravenous Chupacabra that he's picked up this turn has an abundance of targets.
Yeah, it's quite good, I would say. Now maybe what Abella is thinking about, if I'm going to play the Chupacabra, which creature do I want to kill? He might actually think about, if he wants to attack Ho-Jae-Han himself directly, he might think about actually leaving the Midnight Reaper up, killing just maybe the bigger Jade Light range, so that actually Ho-Jae-Han loses some life, so that he can press on with his board advantage and keep attacking face. Quite a risky plan, but especially because I assume Hojahan will try to double block the Carnage Tyrant, but we'll see soon enough. Okay, Memorial to Folly, bring back Carnage Tyrant along with the 6th land there from his hand, and looks like a pass.
Double Dino.
Double Dino.
Watch out.
Yeah, he might go for just a big attack on the following turn. See if Vivian Reed can maybe bring some Chupacabras for Hojahan. And remember, he kept that Midnight Reaper.
I mean, double Midnight Reaper, it creates some really weird sort of board states whereby all of a sudden the mass removal that your opponent may find themselves drawing into ends up being not nearly as exciting. So, speaking of exciting, some nice cards off Vivian Reed here. Carnage Tyrant, straightforward and powerful. Ravenous Chupacabra, ultimately not good enough compared to a Dino.
Yeah, goes for the big Dino. Deploys it, and we're in a Dino face-off again.
Which one's Nick Cage? Which one's John Travolta? There's no way of knowing because sometimes their faces, they just switch around.
We're going to see here again.
Team Philippines sweating out every draw step here. Right now, their board looks all right.
Detection Tower, that can take away the Hexproof from the Carnage Tyrant, and now the Chupacabra can take care of that Tyrant on the other side of the board. One more card from Hojahan of that Midnight Reaper, but I think we're... No attacks? Big attacks here from Philippines. Boom.
That's how we do it. And this is the reason Detection Tower's in the deck.
What a
yes,
draw.
In principle, there might be some other hexproof in the format, but this is the key threat that you want to be able to deal with. And by Reina Dabella being the person that was allowed the Detection Tower, I can imagine that being a card that might have been scrapped over between the different decks in this Team Unified Standard. He was able to find the exact answer he needed, and Team Philippines will have to feel very pleased with that, because now we find ourselves in a position where it's going to be very difficult for Hojahan to come back from what he finds himself with now.
Yeah, this is very tough. Any double block on the Carnage Tyrant means you're taking a bunch of damage from the other ones, and the Midnight Reaper is really not helping here. This will force Hojahan to take a bit more extra damage, and I think, yeah, there's no way to block this, and the Philippines take it home.
Great result for the Philippines. They advance to 1-0 in their pod. We will be seeing them playing against France next round, I believe, led by Jean-Emmanuel Duprat. Meanwhile, for South Korea, they've got to play against Sweden and then win another match if they're going to escape from this pool play. These pool groups can feel brutal.
They certainly can, Tim. Thanks very much to Tim and Matej for the decider. Here, I'm your host, Rich Hagan. Down on the floor could be the always happy Maria Maltholdi, could be the always happy Brian David Marshall. Who knows? All right, so why don't we take a look at some results for you, give you a sense of what's been going on here, and we'll show you here. So here's Pool A. Peru against Australia. Australia won that one, so they will face Finland, who beat Canada. So
big win there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Australia play Finland for the pod. Peru play Canada in the elimination match next round. So Peru had a perfect day one, Matej, at 4-0. But suddenly, one loss, and now you face double elimination from here.
Yeah, this is brutal. I've played the World Magic Cup twice, and it's just really unrelenting. You just have to keep winning to keep it going, and your good day ones really don't matter.
Have you ever played the World Magic Cup, Tim?
I have not, though I was in a very successful photo pretending to be a team while we were testing out some of our photo bits. That was myself, Maria, and Neil Rigby pretending to be Team Macedonia.
Oh, awesome. That was a little rehearsal. Because I've not played in the World Magic Cup either. I was just trying to work out how you just slip in that you've played a couple of times at this event, just in a very casual...
Wouldn't know. Haven't had a chance to do that one.
No, neither have I.
Have covered them all, though.
Fair, yeah. Always there on Sunday. There for the top 8 every time.
Undefeated.
Perfect. All right, so that was Peru. Let's move on to Pool B and show you what we've got here. Israel defeated Estonia. Hungary defeated Wales. So that means that Estonia and Wales will face off in the elimination match. Israel and Hungary will see which gets to advance and which goes into the decider in game round number 3. Let's move on to Pool C for you. And big match there. The Hong Kong all-star Li Shi-chan and co. against Christian Hauck, David Joachim, and, of course, Mark Tobias for Germany. It was Hong Kong who won that one. So they are in to the advance round, as it were. And Mexico defeated Slovenia. Slovenia, therefore, go down. So we'll see what happens with that one. And then we're into the group of death. It's Pool D. And, well, we, of course, saw Italy lose to Portugal. And we have discovered that Denmark have lost to Austria. So it will be Austria and Portugal for the win. But that means we have our collision course, Tim. We have Italy against Denmark, with the only two possible dual winners of World Magic Cup in history, Andrea Mengucci and Simon Nielsen, going toe-to-toe. Now, if you were picking feature matches, Tim, might you pick Italy-Denmark?
I think there's a very real chance that I would go in that direction. You know, two champions enter, one will leave. Well, I guess one will leave to go home, and one will leave to potentially pick up the trophy later. It seems like it seems incredible to me that we can get such high-stakes magic so early in the day.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to be up early because you can be out real fast in this thing. All right, Pool E, let's take a look for you and show you what's going on here. A group that everyone will feel they have a chance to get out of. So Belarus with their win over Romania. Remember, this is Nikolai Potovin amongst the Belarus crew, a really, really good Magic player. They've beaten Romania. China have beaten Thailand with Chirawat Thavirinda leading their team. Yeah, I know. And then that means that, therefore, Belarus and China will go at it in round number 2. Thailand and Romania will be your elimination match. Now, brace yourselves. Pool F. Well. There's two things going on there. Let's start at the bottom. Number 3 seed, Malta, win versus United States. And for confirmation, 4, United States, loss versus Malta. Anton Morgenstern and the crew defeated one of the greatest players of all time, Seth Manfield, plus Team USA up against it on 0-1. Now, I can tell you that the other match, you notice we don't have a result there. That's because I'm just looking at a piece of paper held by Maria Bartholdi. It says 4 words. Sudden death game 3. So at that point, bring it back to the desk if you would, Rashad, and we should have a little discussion about this, because this is the one day of the Magic year where you can't draw.
Just can't do it. You can try, it won't work.
So, basic idea. Table A wins, Table B wins on the other side. We're now in a deciding match. They're at 1 game all, let us say. So here we are in game 3. Time gets called. We play 5 extra turns. That's the basic pattern. We're all normal so far. Normally, we'd sign a result slip saying it was a draw. What's the next phase, Matej?
The next phase is the next life total change.
No, it's just life total first, right?
Yeah, life total first. Yes, of course.
So if you're on 19 and I'm on 14 at the end of 5 turns, you win.
Yeah. This
is the only place that occurs. So that's the first thing. Do you have a higher life total? Someone said Wild Growth Walker for the win.
I can see some better lines of play. Mountain Shock.
Mountain Shock is a popular one. So that's your straightforward, are you ahead on life at the end of 5 extra turns? But if you're even, if we're still at 20-20 or indeed at 3 each, then it's life total change. The first life total change, doesn't matter if it's 1 point of damage off a land, Tim, or
1 point of life gain off something. Wild Growth Walker for the win, gain 3.
There we are. Exactly. So at that point, first life change. What we have here with sudden death game 3 is that the two teams, Uruguay and South Africa, they've each won 1 match. They have just finished game 2 in extra turns to force a game 3. And in that game 3, Matej, tell us how you sideboard for a sudden death game 3.
Well, because it really depends on the archetypes that are facing off against each other. That's the first thing. Another tip: you don't want to play a shock land like Overgrown Tomb untapped on turn 1, because that means just you've instantly lost. So basically, you're just trying to get rid of all the expensive cards. put in as much of the cheap interaction as possible, and just hope that you're going to be able to change the life total in your favor, just even slightly.
Right, so you look at your Carnage Tyrants and go, this game is never getting to a Carnage Tyrant.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this is that this is a whole new Magic sort of game. It's really unlike anything else. You're really just changing your complete deck, even just bringing in cards that might not even make sense in that particular matchup, just because it might be cheap, it might be a good way to answer what your opponent is doing. It's a really whole new ballpark.
And of course, we've got not one player doing this, Tim. We've got 3 on both sides.
Wow, yeah, the atmosphere in this match. I mean, you basically, in addition to all of your sideboarding decisions, imagine the mulligan decisions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we're hearing from our scorekeepers out on the floor. You know, we call it sudden death, but there's nothing sudden about the death that happens in a sudden death game 3. Because you pour over your 7, then you pour over your 6, then you go, well, if they don't have this or this or this, then my 5's okay. What's the probability of them having that? And that's where you really want a Frank Carsten on the team.
If only we had Frankie numbers somewhere in the building. I mean, it's something that if we could figure out what the best deck for a sudden death game 3 was before the end of the weekend, I think that might be a valuable thing to throw into coverage somewhere.
I mean, it's obviously a mono red deck, right? I mean, it has to be because the Mountain Shock.
It's pretty
idea,
good. Yeah, another card that I think are decent enough are Legion's Landing. Because you get a lifelinking guy, and so you can swing in if your opponent has a sensor block. Llanowar Elf is also like decent enough. Maybe something like Healer's Hog as well from the mono white aggro list.
Right.
So there's a bunch of stuff going on there. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, having a lifelink creature, I mean, in addition to obviously just being a creature that can attack for the win, even if they block it, you still win because you gain the life. Yeah. So lifelink creatures seem pretty gigantic.
Okay, so that's what's going on out on the floor. South Africa and Uruguay are still battling away. Meanwhile, whoever loses that sudden death will then have to face USA in an elimination match. Don't lose the sudden death. Don't do that. That would be bad. South Africa and Uruguay. Just top tip there for you. All right, let's carry on with our review of the pools here for you. Pool G is up next, and it's the Philippines, France, Sweden, and South Korea. Tim's already alluded to this. Philippines, we've seen taking out South Korea, and France with Jean-Emmanuel Duprat, winner of Grand Prix Warsaw last year. A win over Joe Larson and his 2 teenage teammates who had a fantastic day yesterday. I think they were 4-1. Certainly put their feet up for a couple of rounds, but now it will be an elimination match between Sweden and South Korea. Philippines and France will look to advance in round 2. And then we go to Pool H. And in Pool H, I feel like we've missed a trick. Look, on coverage, there's so much going on. We cannot tell you about everything all the time. But guys, I really feel like we've slept on Japan. We didn't see them in the feature match yesterday, as far as I'm aware. They were never...
Yes, we did.
We got them in? Yeah. Oh, okay, we got them in. But it feels like we didn't pay a lot of attention to them. They're not a big-name star power this time around. Ken Yukihiro +2 versus Shota Yasuoka, Yuya Watanabe, and what turned out to be an incredibly good national champion in Kenta Harana when they won last year. But here they are, 4-1 overnight. They come in. They've won again over Mike Krasnitsky and the crew and Alexei Ryabakon of the Ukraine. And now they're 1 win away from the top 16 again, really without paying much attention.
I mean, true, Japan quite underrated. Their team is very solid. Actually, I looked at the stats from the other 2 players, the non-Ken Yukihiro players, and they only started playing their first GP like this year and last year, and they've done really well since then to like get a really good win percentage at GPs. But one thing I'm looking forward to next round is Japan against Slovakia, and while it might not seem that way, it is basically a grudge match because these 2 teams played last year.
In the top 8?
Just before the top 8, in the last pool and in the top 8.
Right.
So where Slovakia won to advance to the top 8 in the pool, in the pools, then lost to them in the top 8 of the World Magic Cup last year. So I'm pretty sure Ivan had some great matches with Yuya Watanabe last year. He might now have to tussle with Ken Yukihiro.
So you're telling me that Japan let them in to the top 8 last year so they'd have a nice easy matchup on Sunday?
No, Yuya Watanabe basically said that Ivan Floch is too good.
Yeah.
So, from Yuya Watanabe, that's as gracious as it comes.
It is. All right, so, my friends, the news is in that Uruguay have defeated South Africa in sudden, prolonged, grindingly death, which means that South Africa will face USA in an elimination match next round. The pairings are up. We're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, Marshall and Simon will be here to see whether Andrea Mengucci or Simon Nielsen can keep the dream alive, being a 2-time World Magic Cup champion. Don't go anywhere.